Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to the British Grand Prix weekend at Silverstone. For many of us, a home Grand Prix, and it is the 12th race weekend of the season, meaning that we are halfway through this mammoth 2025 Formula One season. It's been a good season, I would say, so far. Not as probably good as last season or as great as other seasons, but it's been a good season so far. And we still have a championship battle, thankfully, going on the driver's side, even if it's not quite what we expected coming into the season, and maybe what some people hoped for. But yeah, the halfway point of the season, the first half of the season has absolutely flown by. We started the year in the middle of March in Melbourne, which was, 3.5 months ago. And yeah, it has absolutely flown by. And here we are at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, a Grand Prix that rarely disappoints. We've had so many great races and great racing around this track in the last, not even 10 years. If you just go back over the years, this track has always been one of the best on the calendar, year in, year out, for, basically ever since it's been on the calendar, all the way back, at the very start of the Formula One Championship in 1950. The drivers love it. The fans love it. We all love it. Even Stefano Domenicali said that Silverstone will probably be on the calendar forever. So, yeah, that's why this track is so beloved, because it is just, not just, has it provided so much excitement for us in dry and wet conditions, and we've had so many great overtaking moments and great bits of wheel-to-wheel racing, but the track itself is arguably the greatest racetrack on the planet. It is absolutely brilliant, and it, again, rarely disappoints. It's going to take, though, some going for it to match last year's British Grand Prix. Last year's British Grand Prix was a classic, no doubt about that. We'll see what happens. Obviously, last year's race, we had, on and off rain, which really helped proceedings. Looking at the weather forecast this weekend, rain is possible, but unlikely. Looking at the forecast, it looks like it's going to be an overcast and windy weekend at Silverstone, which it is in much of the south of England. Pretty much is the case in my part of the UK, in the southwest. So, yeah, that is what the weather is doing at the moment. Again, there is a chance of rain. There is the odd shower in the area, but looking at the weather forecast, it looks like those showers will probably avoid the circuit. If they do hit the circuit, though, it will only be a small shower. It won't be anything major. So, yeah, it should be a dry weekend, but it won't be the most glorious weekend for the fans who have gone. Again, it's going to be overcast and quite windy, so it'll probably feel quite cold compared to the incredible heat and humidity we've had in the last few days. And obviously next week, if you look at the forecast here in the UK, especially in the south, that heat and humidity is absolutely coming back with a roar next week. But yeah, it's going to be probably a dry weekend, just not the greatest dry conditions that you would hope for if you were an attending fan. But yeah, hope you guys are all well ahead of this British Grand Prix weekend. No matter what time zone you're in, what part of the world you're from, hope everything is going as well as possible given whatever circumstances you may be going through. And I hope today you can join me in watching along and enjoying qualifying at Silverstone. If you can't watch along the session, though, if you're busy doing something else, if you're working, or there's just something else that you're busy with, but you want to keep up to date with the session, this is a great place to be, because I will keep you absolutely bang up to date with the goings on of qualifying at the British Grand Prix. As you can see on the screen, we are an hour and 25 minutes away from the session getting underway. And as usual, we'll go through what we usually go through in the build-up to qualifying. We'll go through the results of practice 2 from yesterday. We'll get into the sector time data as well, just to see why certain teams are on the pace and certain teams are off the pace. I'll obviously give my full qualifying prediction. We will also go through the teams in a bit more depth and go through what the teams possibly could get at best in qualifying today. But in terms of the pecking order so far, there are a couple parts of it which are different to how I expected in a positive way, but most of the order is as I expected. So, yeah. In the dry, again, McLaren, I still think, even though Ferrari have topped 2 of the 3 practice sessions so far, I still think McLaren, when all is said and done, as long as the 2 drivers, maximize their laps in Q3, I still think McLaren have got absolutely the best car here. So, yeah, we'll see ultimately in qualifying. But, yeah, we'll get on to the results of practice 2 yesterday and how the pecking order is looking this weekend. Before I do, though, of course, there is a poll running in the chat. Let me know in that poll, which will keep running until the start of Q3, which will be in about an hour and 15 minutes or so from now. Will it be an hour and 15 minutes? No, it'll be an hour and 2 hours and 15 minutes, sorry, from now. Yeah, let me know in that poll. Who do you think takes pole position for the British Grand Prix? Will it be home driver Lando Norris, who has obviously his own stand at this Grand Prix? Will it be championship leader Oscar Piastri? Or will it be Charles Leclerc for the first time in his career taking pole at Silverstone? Or for yet another time, and maybe the last time in his career, will Lewis Hamilton take pole position? Let me know in that poll running in the chat. And I believe Lewis Hamilton is one of the poll options. Let me just have a quick look. And yeah, he is. As well, one thing you might notice in the chat is a little number thing next to your account if you are more so a regular. Yeah, they've included now on YouTube in the chat a top fan thing. So, yeah, the more, I guess, you interact, then the higher your top fan rating goes. I'm not sure I like it too much, to be honest, but at least it shows who is more so, interacting in the chat and that. But, yeah, there you go. That's a new thing that I have not added. That's a new thing that YouTube have added to live streams here on the platform. Anyway, there's that poll. Again, make sure to vote in it before we get to the start of Q3. But let's get into the results of practice 2 yesterday. And McLaren were the quickest team in FP2 by a couple tenths of a second, but it doesn't quite tell the story of, I guess, the pace difference between McLaren and Ferrari, because Ferrari did not quite hook up the overall best lap they could have done in FP2. Their optimal lap was actually only half a tenth slower than what McLaren did with Lando Norris, but overall the Ferrari drivers were not able to hook up the absolute best lap in FP2. So Ferrari, in practice, have been pretty much, if they've been slower than McLaren, they've been on the pace, right on the pace of them. But yeah, they've also topped 2 of the 3 practice sessions so far. Now, McLaren, I do think, are to a degree holding back compared to Ferrari. I do think McLaren are still the favourites for pole position. I still think McLaren have what it takes, as long as the drivers deliver, to take pole and even maybe the front row as well. But Ferrari, without a doubt, are a lot closer to not just McLaren, but just the front of the field in general than they were, a few weeks ago. And this upgrade they've brought to Silverstone, they still, by the way, are waiting to bring that suspension upgrade, which is coming, I think now at the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, which is in 3 weeks' time. So further improvements hopefully coming for Ferrari. But the upgrades they've brought here Oh, not here, but the upgrades they've brought in the last week or so, because they did bring an upgrade at the Red Bull Ring. Clearly, it has improved the Ferrari car. That is very clear to see, not just from what we saw last week, but what we've seen so far this weekend, because the closest team to McLaren by far has been Ferrari. Red Bull and Mercedes are not a million miles away, but they are definitely not on the same pace as Ferrari around this circuit. So, yeah, Ferrari, good to see that their upgrade package, not their full upgrade package, that they're delivering. Again, the full package will be delivered at Spa in 3 weeks with the suspension, but good to see that the upgrades they're putting on are actually improving the car. It's desperately what they have needed for this 2025 machine. Doesn't mean they're going to start winning races necessarily. They are still, I think, fundamentally probably, a 2 to 3 tenths of a second per lap away from ultimately having the pace to fight properly for race wins. But they have definitely closed the gap. There is no doubt about that. They are probably 2 to 3 tenths of a second closer to McLaren now than they were a month ago. So, yeah, that is really great to see from Ferrari. And if that suspension upgrade at Spa does work, I think Ferrari could take a race win before the summer break. That'd be really great if we could see that, because, Ferrari, we need them winning some races in a Formula One season. Ferrari looking good. Second and third with Leclerc and Hamilton. Oscar Piastri fourth. Piastri nearly half a second slower than teammate Norris. He will be obviously a lot closer than that in qualifying. And then Max Verstappen fifth, half a second off the pace of the McLaren. Now, Max is doing his best with this Red Bull car, but there were some onboard shots yesterday of the Red Bull, and it was undrivable at times through the slow speed corners. He did eventually manage to hook up good enough laps, but that Red Bull car is nowhere near the front this weekend. Max, I think, could end up on the second row of the grid here today if he really pulls out a great lap, which we know he can. But I would be pretty surprised if, just given the performance this weekend, I'd be pretty surprised if he ended up on the podium this weekend. Which, if he was to not end up on the podium, if Piastri, the championship leader, finishes at least second this weekend, then it's done, isn't it? Championship-wise for 2025. Max needs, at worst, a podium at this Grand Prix, and to hope, obviously, that Oscar Piastri doesn't win. But at the minute, looks like Max is going to be very fortunate to finish on the podium. Not impossible. I think if we do get some wet weather, that would really help Max's chances. But in the dry, that Red Bull car looks like it's the worst of the front four teams. The only thing keeping it in decent competitive state is Max Verstappen. So, yeah, the Red Bull not looking good. Not as good as I thought it would be. I didn't think it'd be that great at Silverstone, but I thought they'd be the next best team after McLaren. But, yeah, that doesn't look to be the case. Antonelli then in sixth place. Mercedes look decent, but I think, like Red Bull, they just don't have the pace of McLaren and Ferrari and are clearly a bit away from those teams. I think that's pretty clear to see. They're losing probably 2 to 3 tenths of a second per lap to at least Ferrari. And then probably, I think overall when McLaren show their full potential, probably a bit more than to McLaren. And then Lance Stroll, P7 Aston Martin, looking very good, which is great to see. Saying that, they did look very strong in practice in Austria, and then in qualifying were disastrous, but then clawed it back in the race. But I think this time around at Silverstone, they'll be delivering maybe not that quite a strong pace, but I think they'll definitely have a car in the top 10 in Q3 today. They've got, by the looks of it, a strong enough car. George Russell then 8th for Mercedes. Russell will be ahead of Antonelli in qualifying, but yeah, Mercedes, like I said, I don't think have got the pace really to be fighting for a top 3 really at all. Again, 2 to 3 tenths away from really being able to fight for that. And then completing the top 10, the 2 Racing Bulls cars of Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson. And that is good to see, but it is not really a surprise. I was expecting Racing Bulls this weekend to have a pretty good car around this type of track. And no surprise, they are looking good. So yeah, keep your eye on Racing Bulls. They should be, as long as both drivers hook up their laps in qualifying, I think really they should get both drivers into Q3. I think they're that strong, are Racing Bulls. So yeah, looking good for them. And then the rest of the top, or not top 10, but the rest of the field, you've got Alex Albon in 11th place. Albon, I must say, doing very well to end up in 11th place, because that Williams car does not look like it's anywhere near the top 10 in terms of performance, but he is putting it up in 11th place there. So Albon doing his best, but Williams have quite clearly fallen off the pace, and we all know why. Williams said a few weeks ago they will not be upgrading this car anymore, and now they're going to fall off the pace and probably fall down the championship eventually. Fernando Alonso 12th, not a great practice from him, but Lance Stroll clearly showed the potential the Aston Martin car has, so Alonso should be in the top 10 as well. This is a track that Fernando really does like. Alonso has had pole position here at Silverstone 3 times in his career and has won the British Grand Prix twice, I believe. Won it in 2006 and 2011 for Renault and Ferrari respectively. And yeah, was on pole in 2005, 2006 and 2012. So yeah, Fernando, great around this track. And I'm sure if the car legitimately is top 10 material, like it has shown to be, Alonso will be in the top 10. Bortoleto 13th, looking good. Bortoleto compared to his teammate, but Sauber, yeah, not looking as strong as they did a week ago, which is not really a surprise. This is not a circuit I don't think that's going to suit them as much. Ocon 14th. Haas looking pretty decent. Keep an eye out for them. They might be able to get both cars through to Q2, which is not something they've done a lot this season. They tend to be a team we've seen that qualify quite low, but then make loads of progress in a race and end up finishing in the points. But I think, looking at their performance so far, if Oliver Behrman can step it up, I think they could get both cars into Q2 and maybe even be just outside of the top 10. So, yeah, keep your eye on the Haas team. Even though it looks like Behrman might be getting a penalty for a red flag infringement of crashing on the entry to the pit lane. So, yeah, we will see what happens with that. Yuki Tsunoda 15th. I mean, what can I say? Not good enough from Tsunoda. Should be, at worst, say, right in between Albon and Alonso. But, yeah, Tsunoda, yet again, miles off the pace. Carlos Sainz 16th, also miles off the pace, performing quite poorly, we must say. Not only did he end up 3 tenths off his teammate, but ended up having a crash as well in practice too. So yeah, Carlos has not looked good once again. For Williams, Hulkenberg 17th, Gasly 18th, Behrman 19th, and Colapinto 20th. You can't really complain about Colapinto's performance compared to his teammate this time. Alpine are just terribly slow and look like they are pretty much by far the slowest team on the grid this weekend. But let's try to understand why that is and why, say, Ferrari are so competitive this weekend. So in the first sector from practice 2, McLaren, half a tenth quicker than Ferrari. And as you'll see through the lap, it's really only the slow speed corners where I think McLaren are superior to Ferrari still. In the high speed corners, Ferrari look like they're right on the same pace as McLaren, if not maybe a tad not even tad slower, a tad quicker through that part of the lap. But in the slower speed corners, turn 3, turn 4, that last chicane being another example, Luffield as well, McLaren do look to be a bit better in that area. But yeah, first sector, McLaren, Ferrari, and then Red Bull just behind in third, Mercedes fourth, front four teams doing absolutely fine. And then you got Aston Martin, Williams, decent in the first sector, and then Sauber, Haas, Racing Bulls, and Alpine. For Racing Bulls, kind of a similar story to what we saw in Austria. There, in the first sector, they were quite slow, and then in the rest of the lap, they were much quicker. And that is pretty much the case here. But if Racing Bulls can improve their first sector pace by, say, a tenth or so, that could really help them get a pretty strong position in qualifying today. The middle sector, though, pretty much is about high speed, not just the straights, but the high speed corners of Copse, Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel, and that whole section. And yeah, Ferrari and McLaren, not just the two quickest teams, but by far the two quickest teams over, 34.5 seconds. Mercedes and Red Bull quite far back, considering the, just this middle sector. Mercedes, quarter of a second off the pace, and Red Bull, nearly 4 tenths off the pace in the middle sector. And that is ultimately why Red Bull are slower than Ferrari, McLaren, and even Mercedes to a degree, because the all-around package, downforce-wise, whether it's slow corners, high-speed corners, it's just not good enough. And that's why they're off the pace like they are. Racing Bulls, you can see, a lot quicker compared to the rest of the field in the middle sector. Aston Martin still quick. And then Haas, decent pace. Williams, you can see dropping off in the downforce areas, which again, that's because of the lack of upgrades they've brought. And then Sauber and Alpine, the two slowest teams. Alpine nearly 7 tenths off the pace in the middle sector. And then the final sector, you've got the Hangar Straight, Stowe Corner, and then that final chicane. McLaren is slightly quicker, I think, probably because of the run through that final chicane. Ferrari's still quick, though. Aston Martin, very quick, level on pace with Red Bull. Racing Bulls quick as well. Mercedes, the only team really you're looking at who should do a lot better. They should be at least, I'd say, half a tenth quicker through this part of the lap. To be honest, though, even if they were, I don't think it'd make really a difference to their weekend. And then Haas, not too bad. And then you got Alpine, a bit better in the final part of the lap compared to the rest of the lap. Williams, though, pretty slow in the final sector. 3 tenths off the pace of McLaren, and even, a quarter of a second or so slower than midfield rivals Aston Martin. So yeah, Williams really, it's the middle and final sector for them that it just falls apart for Williams around this circuit. But yeah, McLaren and Ferrari through the sectors, they are definitely the two best teams. Again, overall, I would say McLaren, I think, are the best team here at, in qualifying trim. Not by a massive amount, but by enough. I think McLaren are ahead of Ferrari. But McLaren and Ferrari, definitely the two quickest teams. And after that, you'd have to say, I think probably Mercedes overall. If we go back to these practice 2 results, I think Mercedes are slightly quicker than Red Bull. But I do think Max will still end up out-qualifying the two Mercedes drivers purely because of how amazing of a driver he is. So, yeah, Max and the Mercedes drivers will be around about the same place. So, yeah, McLaren quickest, Ferrari second, Mercedes third, Red Bull fourth, Aston Martin, you'd have to say probably fifth, Racing Bull sixth, seventh. I would probably say, I'm going to say Haas 7th. I really think they're looking quite decent here in qualifying. Keep an eye out for them. They're going to be, I think, if they can get both cars into Q2 and get, say, like 12th, 13th on the grid, I think they have a very strong race, Haas, considering how good their race pace is. So yeah, Haas 7th, 8th, I'd probably say probably Williams just ahead of Sauber, and then Alpine again, quite clearly the slowest of the 10 teams. So that's the pecking order. It looks like for qualifying, again, qualifying should be dry. Will be a bit cooler than yesterday. Yesterday was quite a bit warmer. It was hot and sunny pretty much for the whole day at Silverstone yesterday. So, yeah, that will change things to a degree, no pun intended. But overall, I think that pecking order that I've just said, I think that will pretty much be the pecking order the whole way through. I don't think there's going to be any massive differences today, unless we do get a proper amount of rain. But let me now, as we've got about an hour to go until qualifying, let me now go through my full and final qualifying predictions for this British Grand Prix. On pole, Oscar Piastri, I'm going ahead of Lando Norris. The reason is because Lando, obviously, all the pressure is on him to deliver pole in the fastest car and at his home Grand Prix. And I think ultimately, just like last year, he will fail to deliver under that pressure. And the championship leader, Oscar Piastri, will take advantage and he will end up on pole position. Lando Norris will be second. Third will be Charles Leclerc. Fourth, Max Verstappen, I think, will just sneak ahead of Lewis Hamilton on the grid. Purely because Hamilton, I still think, will lag a couple tenths of a second or so behind Leclerc. And that will give Max enough of a gap to just about get himself into. Wouldn't be shocked, though, again, if Hamilton ended up beating Verstappen on Sunday because of just how the Red Bull looks. And then, Lewis Hamilton, I think, will be fifth. And then sixth, George Russell. Seventh, Kimi Antonelli. Eighth, Fernando Alonso. Ninth, Isaac Hadjar. And 10th, Liam Lawson, who, of course, finished sixth in qualifying and in the race last week at the Red Bull Ring. So that's my prediction for qualifying. Let me know, guys, in the chat. Do you agree or disagree? Who do you think takes pole? Who do you think will end up where? Let me know in the live chat, as we've got just over 1 hour to go until qualifying is underway at Silverstone. I'll sync up the timer and get it all on screen once the next minute ticks over. But just wanted to say quickly, make sure to smash the like button if you haven't already. Does help the channel in the algorithm. It does help as well show me that you guys enjoy the content, so make sure to smash the like button. And if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more content like this, as we do quali and race watch-alongs pretty much for every Grand Prix. So yeah, make sure to do so. But there you go. Just over pretty much an hour to go until qualifying is underway. Niv, good to see you. Says 10th place grid drop for Behrman. Right, so Behrman's race weekend absolutely destroyed. And Nib also saying, did you see my DM? No, but I am looking right now. And I can see that Behrman has got that 10th place drop and 4 penalty points because the stewards found he accelerated to a faster speed than in his previous in-lap. Incredibly stupid from Behrman, I must say. Anyway, for the next probably half an hour, we're going to go through your comments and then I'll go on to the teams quickly and how they should all do in qualifying and what they should be aiming for in this session. But let me just adjust myself, and yeah, let's start going through some comments. Rounded protocols is out from a heat wave. Had to wake up at 6 a.m. to stay outside to take cool air and lock myself drying 13 hours in aircon, which is not good. Yeah, it's been incredibly hot. All pretty much all over Europe as of late. But yeah, thankfully here, especially in the south, this weekend and I think Monday as well, it's a bit cooler because we've got some rain in the area, and also the wind has picked up thankfully. But from Tuesday on next week here in the south, it is unbelievably hot. So yeah. Um Dane says Hamilton for the win as well for me. Norris to beat Oscar. As hello to Crystal Racing. Good to see you. Uh Crystal Racing says, am I the only one who thinks Silverstone should replace Monaco as a member of the Motorsport Triple Crown? I understand what you mean, but Monaco is it's Monaco, and it is ultimately it's the ultimate test of the racing driver. That's why it's part of the Triple Crown. Silverstone is a great test of a racing driver as well, but yeah, Monaco absolutely I think deserves its place in the Triple Crown. Um Sky says Max Verstappen will make the podium hopefully. Why couldn't he make another title? Well, if the Red Bull car improved, absolutely he could, but at the moment, if things remain as they are in terms of the performance difference, Max Verstappen is not winning the 2025 championship. And this weekend, again, his hopes are hanging by a thread. And even that is maybe being generous to Verstappen. But if Oscar Piastri wins the Grand Prix this weekend, which I think he will, and Max Verstappen is not on the podium, then I think championship is over for Max. So yeah, it's that DNF, which obviously he had no control over in Austria last week. That DNF is very costly for Max, very costly. Um, because obviously he lost 18 points to Piastri. Obviously that penalty he got in Spain for the collision with Russell, very costly. So Max in the last 3 races, Max has scored 19 points. Meanwhile, Piastri has scored, I think, 55 points. So, yeah, these last 3 races have been just killer for Max's championship. But again, it's not impossible. It is still a possibility. But Max will have to finish at least on the podium this weekend to have any sort of chance going forward. And again, hope that Piastri doesn't win the Grand Prix this weekend. And then, obviously, we've still got a couple races before the summer break at Spa and the Hungaroring, where Max would have to win at least one of those races to keep up. But at the minute, it doesn't look like Verstappen is even going to win another race. Never mind win the championship. So, yeah. Dane says Sauber doing a phenomenal job. Absolutely. Um, Crystal Race is saying get Getting Hulkenberg, Wheatley, and Bonotto has transformed Sauber for the better. Absolutely, it has. And, of course, this is all in view to next year when they become the Audi Formula One team. So, yeah, looking good for them. I am very excited to see what they do next year as Audi, but yeah, ultimately, who knows where they'll be on the grid next year. Grumpy Monkey, interesting name. Says Kimi's performing really well, being up there with the veterans. Uh, I think he's had some. I think some races this year he's been good, but I think he's been a bit inconsistent as Antonelli this year. Obviously his debut season, which you would expect. He's 18. He's got a long way to go to become the best version of himself. But yeah, I think Antonelli's had at best, I would say, a decent season. Um, KH says Antonelli should be a multi-championship winner. We'll have to see about that because, I mean, at the moment, he is consistently a couple tenths of a second per lap slower than Russell. Um, and obviously Russell is one of the best on the grid, but he's not the absolute best. Antonelli though will get better, but I'm not sure he's going to get better to the point where he is absolutely going to be a multi-championship winner. But again, he's only 18. He's got such a long career ahead of him. So ultimately, let's wait and see. But yeah. And obviously, we don't even know if he's going to be at the Mercedes team for next season. So yeah, we'll see. Hello to Astro. Good to see you. Who says, love to see Lewis on pole, would be almost as good as having Oscar on pole. Um, Let me just scroll down a bit further. Nib saying Behrman also dropped it, attacking the pit entry and hit the barrier, wiping off his front wing and nose. That was under red flags. It's been noted for, by race control as a red flag infringement. And then, the stewards punished him, rightly so. And actually, KH has actually reminded me of something. Remember that Antonelli will be getting a 3-place grid drop for tomorrow's race. So wherever Antonelli qualifies, he will start 3 places lower on the grid. So if he was to qualify 7th, which I think is very realistic for where he will probably end up, then he will start then in P10. But then he should come back to finish in that position as long as he doesn't have another crash or wipe anyone out on the first lap. Addy asks, do you genuinely believe in Ferrari's pace? I believe Ferrari are definitely quick enough to finish on the podium, but again, I don't think they're quick enough to win. No. They will need either an absolutely amazing driver performance or they'll need a bit of luck, I think, to win the Grand Prix this weekend. I think it's a lot more likely, especially with the improvements they've made, I think it's a lot more likely that they'll win the next Grand Prix on the calendar which is the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, for a couple reasons. One, again, because of the improvements they've made, but secondly, they've got another upgrade coming at Spa, which is that suspension. I think it's a rear suspension upgrade they've got. If that works, then I don't see why Ferrari can't win the next Grand Prix at Spa. But in terms of the championship, just to be clear, it's over for Ferrari. They're way too far behind to compete for the championship. So at this point, it's all about, can Ferrari get a few nice, race wins before the end of the season? Because they've left it way too long for the championship at this point. But yeah, if Ferrari were to win, say at Spa, and get their first win of the season before the summer break, that would be really nice. And also, it would be good for the second half of the season, because if Ferrari were properly a factor in the second half of the season in terms of fighting for race wins, that would really make things interesting when it comes to the drivers' championship battle with Norris, Piastri, and maybe Verstappen as well. Because if Ferrari, if that suspension upgrade does work for Ferrari and gives them an extra 2 to 3 tenths on top of what they've already gained in the last, week or so, then I think Ferrari could win quite a few races. Not saying they will actually win them, but I think they'll at least contend for quite a few race wins before the end of the season. But again, that would really make things, interesting on the drivers' championship end, because obviously Ferrari's drivers would then affect the how it all ended with whoever the ultimate championship contenders are, kind of like they did last year, where Ferrari were, you have to say, probably the best team last year after the summer break. They were consistently super quick, and they had, 3 race wins? Probably should have had another in Baku in terms of performance. But obviously Oscar Piastri performed amazingly that race to take that win. But yeah, don't count out Ferrari in terms of winning some races this year. But yeah, championship wise, unfortunately, it's dead and buried for Ferrari. They're just way too far behind. Leclerc is, I think, just under 100 points off the championship lead. So yeah, Leclerc would have to win almost every race from now on to have a chance at winning the championship, which we know is not going to happen. So yeah, but let's have a look at some other comments. Looney Classic says Chazza Max is not winning any championship this year. The car is not there. Even Marco has admitted it's over. I'm still giving him a slight chance because it's Max Verstappen. And again, if Red Bull can still find an upgrade that gives them, quite a bit extra performance compared to what they've got now, then I still think there's a chance. But don't be surprised if even I say Verstappen is out of the championship after this weekend, because it is possible, especially if Max doesn't end up on the podium, which is looking pretty likely. Let me find some other comment series we've got. How long have we got? 45 minutes to go until qualifying is underway. And again, make sure to smash that like button. We're on 26 likes. We can definitely get the likes up. Let's try and get up to 50 plus likes if we can in the next half an hour or so. KH saying Hamilton should have adapted to Ferrari fairly easily. Maybe you could argue that, but I mean, in terms of Lewis's performance this year, yeah, maybe in the early part of the season, the reason why he was so far off his teammate is because he was struggling to adapt. But overall, even in these recent weeks where Lewis, I think, is probably more comfortable with the car, he still is fundamentally slower than his teammate Leclerc, and still is past his best. Again, he may be performing a tad better as of recent, but he's still not the Lewis Hamilton of old. Because the Lewis Hamilton of old would beat Leclerc and be quicker. But Leclerc, yeah, is a very fast driver, but yeah, Hamilton is just a step below what he used to be. But still, despite that, I think Lewis could end up on the podium this weekend if he gets a decent enough qualifying position and maybe a tad bit of luck. So it's definitely not impossible for Hamilton. The car definitely looking quick. David O'Heisem, I think it is. Let me just readjust myself a moment. Says it's all, if Oscar doesn't win in the next 3 to 4 races, would he be out of the championship or still have a chance? Even if he doesn't win the next 4 or 5 races, he would still have a chance at the championship, no doubt. But I think for Piastri, he didn't win obviously in Austria, which, to be honest, I think given that Max retired from the race and that and the way the race went, I don't think Oscar was that disappointed with what happened in Austria. Ultimately, he came out second best. If he had a slight bit better luck with the traffic and the back markers, he may have won that race, but it was still a good result for his championship. 3 races to go until the summer break. I think as long as Oscar wins 2 of these 3 races before the summer break, then I think Drivers' Championship wise, I think he's the clear favourite to win it. And if he was to win, say this weekend and then one of the races at Spa or Hungary, and Lando was to finish second in those 2 races Oscar wins and then win the other one, then Piastri would be at least 22 points clear. That would be the worst, the points difference between the two if, again, Oscar was to win 2 of the next 3 and then, say, the other one, Lando, won and Oscar finished in second. So, yeah, that would set up Oscar, I think, very well for winning the Drivers' Championship. And then in terms of the second half, well, not the second half of the season, because technically the second half of the season starts at Spa, but after the summer break, Oscar, he doesn't need to go and do a Vettel in 2013 and win every single race, but as long as he just keeps up winning the odd race and makes sure that Lando doesn't gain any massive amount of points on him, then I think Piastri wins the championship. Don't know where. It'd be nice if Oscar won the championship at a Grand Prix where everyone back in Australia could watch at a normal time. So that'd be Las Vegas. That'd be a good race weekend for him to win it, which I think the Las Vegas Grand Prix is the end of November. So yeah, that'd be ideal for everyone back at home. But yeah, we'll have to see. And I think again, this increase in performance by Ferrari, which may continue with this suspension upgrade at Spa in 3 weeks, that really will change the what maybe McLaren and Piastri are going to be aiming for in terms of results realistically going forward after the summer break. Because if Ferrari are consistently there fighting for wins right there with McLaren, it's not going to be very easy for Piastri or Norris to get, that many wins in the rest of the season, because obviously Charles Leclerc is, in my view, better than Piastri and Norris. And then you've got Lewis Hamilton, who, if he can occasionally deliver, he might be able to grab a win or two like he did last year for Mercedes, despite being clearly slower than Russell. So, yeah, ultimately, we'll see. But if I was Piastri, that'd be my aim between now and the summer break, is win 2 of the final 3 races before the summer break, and then we'll see what the performance is like compared to the rest going into the rest of the season after the summer break, and yeah, see how it goes. But the gap is only 15 points, so Piastri has to just remain consistent and keep picking up those wins, because even though Lando Norris has performed a lot worse, I think, than Piastri this season, that race in Melbourne where Piastri finished in 9th and Lando won, that is still really why the championship is so close. When really, I'm not saying the championship should not be close, but Piastri should be quite a bit more comfortable than he is. If Oscar had finished even second in that Australian Grand Prix, Oscar right now would be 31 points clear of Norris in the championship, which is a lot more comfortable than 15 points. So yeah, it's again, it's that first Grand Prix of the season, that big difference in result that is really keeping it close. Because since the Chinese Grand Prix, which was the second race of the year, Piastri has clearly been the better driver, and again has been pretty comfortable in being better than Norris since then. Right. Make sure to keep these comments coming, by the way. Looney Classic says it shows how good Lewis is because he challenged for a championship in his first year where other rookies need time to adapt. True, but also Lewis, it was also, was always a special talent. That was clear to see before he even came to Formula One. And yeah, when he came into Formula One, those first couple years, he was absolutely incredible for a driver, not just his age, but his level of experience, especially going up against, Alonso and Raikkonen, who were the, two of the best in the world at the time, and were, even to that point, even though those two were still relatively young then, those two were quite experienced by that point. Obviously, Alonso had won 2 championships running. So, yeah. We are never going to see a rookie as good as Lewis Hamilton. It's never going to happen. The only way you'll ever see a rookie as good or better is if that person wins the championship in their first season. Because Hamilton, remember, only 1 point away he was in the end. Oscar's chances on winning the championship depends on how Lando performs. To a degree, yes. But I think I think there has been some races where Oscar has genuinely been better. I don't think it's been necessarily just because Lando has made mistakes and Oscar hasn't. I think the Spanish Grand Prix was a great example of that. I think last month, where Oscar was just quicker and better. The race in, again, Shanghai, I thought was another great example of that. Miami. So there's been races where Oscar has genuinely outperformed Lando, but there has admittedly been a couple races where, yeah, Lando probably could have beaten Oscar and failed to do so because he crashed or whatever. Looney Classic says winning multiple championships is due to a lot of luck of circumstances. It has nothing to do with being the best. With the right luck, Russell could win 3 championships, but it doesn't mean he is the GOAT. I agree to a degree what you're saying in terms of luck of circumstances, but to win, say, loads of championships in a row, if it's still competitive where you've got a really strong teammate or you're still having to fight really great elite drivers in other teams and you end up still winning the championship, then absolutely I think that can mean that you are the best on the grid. But yeah, obviously it's luck of circumstance. I mean, again, I like Oscar Piastri a lot. I really become quite a fan of his because of just how ice cool under pressure he is. He is, for me, he's the new Iceman in Formula One. He really, really has impressed me in this last year or so. Yeah, Piastri's leading the championship, but yeah, is Piastri the best driver in Formula One? No, absolutely not. But at the end of the day, you don't need to be the best driver in Formula One. You just need to be good enough in a fast enough car to win the championship. And Oscar, credit where credit's due, he's been exactly that this season. Right, let's see if I can find some other comments. I will quickly post a link of the stream out in a moment. Nib saying correct, Shaz. There'll be never another driver better in their first season because they can't test like they once did. Yeah, that's another thing that people forget is back then they had, even if you can go and look at it, even in 2007 in Hamilton's first year, they would be regular in-season tests. There was like 4 or 5 in-season tests per season, where you'd have one at Paul Ricard, Silverstone. There was that one at Monza every year. Yeah. So that really does help. But I do like that we have less in-season testing because a lot of it is it is not worthwhile, I don't think. Crystal Racing saying when a top team gets hold of an elite driver, they tend to keep them for at least 5 years. Hamilton at Merck, Alonso at Ferrari, Vettel at Red Bull, Kimi at McLaren, Schumacher at Ferrari. Thing is, well, if we're talking about McLaren drivers, how would we class them as absolutely elite? I think, but if you were to look at just this season, you'd have to say Oscar Piastri's elite. But if you look at Oscar Piastri's 3 years in total, you probably have to say no. Lando Norris obviously is not an elite level driver in Formula One. The only, I think, if you base it off of the last, say, 3 years, the only elite level Formula One drivers are what? Verstappen, Russell, Leclerc, Alonso, and maybe you could argue Lewis Hamilton purely because 2023 he was really good, and then obviously last year had a couple really good wins. But yeah, Piastri, I think he's absolutely on the way to being one of the best on the grid. I think 2023 and 2024, I think he was on the very edge of being an elite level Formula One driver. But I think this year has made that big step up in his game in qualifying, which has really helped him this season. And if he keeps that up and keeps improving in that aspect, then I think he will be at a point where, yeah, he is absolutely an elite level Formula One driver. Anyway, I will read some more comments, so keep them coming. Just going to quickly post a link of the stream out one final time. Come join us here to Watchalong qualify at Silverstone. Right, so that's all posted. Count Blah saying Alonso. Good to see you, by the way. Long time regular. Yeah, I'd say Alonso. That 2023 season Alonso had, I thought, was really, really great. And last year, I thought Alonso was still really good, but the Aston Martin team really let him down. This year, maybe you could argue hasn't been the greatest by Fernando, but I think these last few races, I think Fernando has been really on great form. Bravo Oz, good to see you as well. Says third year Max versus third year Oscar would be interesting. Oscar makes far less mistakes than Max made in his year. Yeah, third year Max, that's 2017. I think in terms of pure pace and talent, I think Max wins. But like you say, in terms of consistency, Piastri would absolutely be ahead on that. And that is a lot of the time, and this is not, I'm not trying to disrespect Ricciardo here, but that is quite a lot of the time why Ricciardo in 2017 and 2018 at times would beat Verstappen, is because, you know, Max would be quicker most of the time, but Ricciardo would, you know, in the race, just find a way to remain consistent and deliver in crucial moments when Max was a bit, you know, bit all over the place at times. So, yeah. But in terms of pure pace and pure talent, I think, you know, third year Max is still superior. Count Bloss says, what has Alonso won in the last 5 years? He hasn't had a car that can win anything. That is ultimately what it boils down to. Yeah, Aston Martin car was really good for half a season, but I don't. If you look at 2023 and Alonso's results, I don't think. Sorry, let me just mute my mic so I can just clear my throat properly. If you look at 2023 and Alonso's results, maybe bar that Monaco race, I don't think you could look at his results and say could have maybe turned one of these into a win. And half of that Monaco weekend, in terms of half the reason why he didn't win, was because his team messed up in terms of putting the wrong tyres on at his pit stop. Maybe, though, you could say Alonso should have took pole. It was really close. I think Alonso was only, was it less than a tenth away from pole? Yeah, maybe you could argue he should have won that race. But other than that, when has he had the chance to win a race or win anything? Let's be fair to him. Is the Fernando of the last 5 years as good as the Fernando Alonso of his prime? No, he's not. But he is still one of the top few drivers on the grid, no doubt about it. Astro says, reckon Lando is going to be an unofficial number 2 driver soon, Chaz. Not this year. not this year. I think maybe next year if McLaren, if they're at this level, but they've got like a proper rival, like another team right with them. I think maybe Lando might have to play the role towards the end of a season of a number two driver, but he's still McLaren's boy. So yeah, the chances of that happening are slim, I would say. um Verstappen's sector 3 at Monaco was on his final Q3 that was unbelievable. Yeah, Max, that was one of the few moments that year where, even though his car was unbelievably quick, but that was one of the few moments that year where Max proved why he is the best. That final sector was unbelievable. Um, I'll read out, I think, a couple more comments, and then I'm going to go on to the teams quickly in terms of just going through, I think, what teams should be aiming for in this session. Looney Classic says last year Max was never in a championship battle. Norris was so poor and inconsistent that you can't say there was a championship battle last year. There was. I agree. Norris was poor and he really he was a horrible contender. But there was a championship battle. There was, but Norris was just so poor. But yeah, I still think, even though in a couple of his championship years he's had the best car comfortably. Or for at least say a year and a half of those championship years. What do you call it? I still think Max Verstappen is the best driver on the grid. And even though most likely he's not going to win the championship this year, that doesn't change my mind regarding how great Max is. One thing though, I will be doing is, and this will be in the winter, this video, is I am going to make a video ranking the drivers in terms of how, if you're looking at how they've performed basically over the last 3 seasons and then ranking them based on that, which will basically be my rankings of the drivers in terms of who is where, in rather than it being exclusive to how they've performed in a single season. Which I will be doing that, by the way, in the summer break. The F1 2025 mid-season driver rankings that will be coming out in the summer break. So make sure to check that out when it comes out. But yeah, I will be doing, again, in the winter, I will be doing a video ranking all the drivers based off of, again, the last 3 years, which will be basically a ranking of who is the best to who is the worst right now, or consistently in Formula One during this period. Nicholas asks, do you think Max Verstappen might go to Mercedes for 2026, or do you think he might retire or go to Aston Martin? Well, in terms of the true answer, I'm going to wait until this driver lineup video that's coming out soon to say officially, but I would still say I'm leaning towards no in regards to next year. But yeah, I think you guys are going to enjoy this driver lineup video. It's well, in terms of the topic itself, it's gonna throw you off a bit. And I think you guys will enjoy that, and I think it'll be a more enjoyable driver lineup video than what I was originally planning. Um, But yeah, keep the comments coming, and I will get back to them soon. Actually, let me just finish this one. Count Blast saying, I remember people saying Max can win in a tractor, it's him, not the car. Now, well, he can't win in that car, not you, Chazza. Yeah, there are people that exaggerate. That'll be probably, the most hardcore Max fans who think that, it's like 90% him, which obviously it's not. But yeah, all drivers need somewhat of a car to be able to compete. It's not like back in the 80s and the 90s where the drivers had a lot more input into the performance of the cars, which is a shame, because I think if the drivers had that level of input into these cars, I think we'd be getting, even more exciting racing. But yeah, that's just the way it is. But the quality of the grid, I'm very happy with. I think it's still a very high quality grid. And that's why we've had so many great races in the last, year or so. Anyway, let me just hide this countdown. Let's just quickly do a roundup of the teams and how they should be doing in qualifying today. Now, even if Ferrari is super quick today and are right on McLaren's tail, pole positions should still be McLaren's. They are still, for me, the favourites for pole. As long as the drivers nail their laps and don't make any mistakes, I think McLaren take pole. And really, if both drivers are close to each other on lap time and deliver their best laps, then really a front row lockout should be possible for the McLaren team. So, yeah, McLaren, for me, are still the favourites. Ferrari are not that far behind, absolutely. Cannot be counted out. If McLaren don't quite get it together, Ferrari are there to pounce. But as long as McLaren and their drivers deliver, I think pole position in the front row is theirs. For Red Bull, they are really relying on Max Verstappen. He is having to drive a pretty poor car this weekend. A car that I don't think really... I'm not going to say it doesn't have a chance of finishing in the top three, but I would be amazed if it was in the top three. Definitely possible, but very unlikely, let's say. Yeah, Max, I think, probably at best ends up around 4th, 5th place. I think it'll be 4th purely because he will somehow drag enough pace out of that car to get on the second row. But I think that's probably the best he'll do overall for the weekend, because the Red Bull car simply is not as quick as the Ferrari car and of course, the McLaren. So yeah, Max... the odds are being stacked against him. Let's see what he can do with that. Red Bull car, the dog of a Red Bull car it has become, and whether he can drag somehow a great result out of it. For Yuki Tsunoda, I hope he can at least not be eliminated in Q1, but I just don't see how Tsunoda gets into Q3. So yeah, Tsunoda will end up quite far, most likely down the order. Ferrari, definitely McLaren's closest challengers. Really, if Lewis Hamilton especially is at his best, when I say at his best, I mean for how he is performing at the minute, really, it should be either a second row lockout for Ferrari or the same result they got in Austria, which was 2nd and 4th. Ultimately, pole position, I just don't see it happening, even though I would love if Ferrari got on pole, because I think it would really set us up for a brilliant Grand Prix. I just don't think ultimately they have what it takes to get pole position. I think they're missing just a slight bit extra amount of lap time to be able to deliver it. So yeah, Ferrari 3rd and 4th, 2nd and 4th, absolutely possible. Pole position, though, just a slight bit too far ahead of them. And for Mercedes, they I think, again, they are a slight bit quicker than Red Bull, but I think Max still will end up ahead of the two Mercedes drivers purely from being quicker than the two Mercedes drivers. But I think Mercedes are third row material at best. I just don't see them anywhere near the fight for the top three. They're missing, by the looks of it, about a third of a second to be able to fight on that level. So, yeah, Mercedes, I think fifth probably is the best they can get today, which is obviously quite a contrast to last year where they locked out the front row, remember, at this Grand Prix a year ago. But, yeah, nowhere near the same level of pace. And, yeah, Mercedes, I think, would do well to end up even on the second row of the grid. Now on to Aston Martin, who should be, as long as they deliver the pace they showed yesterday, should be the quickest midfield team. Alonso, we know, is super around this racetrack, has won here 3 times. Twice, actually, in the past. He's had 3 pole positions, though, at Silverstone. So we know Alonso can do, great things here. And the car is good enough, absolutely, for him to be not only in the top 10, but I think probably on the 4th row of the grid. So yeah, watch out for Alonso. Lance Stroll, if you're Aston Martin, you'd really be hoping he can make the top 10. Even if it's, 10th he ends up in, at least that would be something. But yeah, Stroll has been incredibly disappointing in qualifying, not just this season, but his entire career. But yeah, watch out for Alonso. I think he'll be right in that top 10 in the midfield. Alpine, unfortunately, have the slowest car this weekend, which is surprising. I thought they'd be a bit quicker than that, but yeah, Alpine have not got any pace. So yeah, be surprised if they were anywhere near the top 10. Haas, watch out for them. It is a shame that Oliver Behrman made that mistake and got that 10th place grid drop, because he was looking potentially like a driver that could end up just outside of the top 10, maybe even making a surprise top 10 appearance if other drivers failed to get it together in Q2, because the Haas car has looked a bit stronger around this track in qualifying trim than it did, say, a week ago in Austria, or even the Grand Prix before that in Canada. And obviously in those Grand Prix they scored points. So yeah, they are looking decent, but I don't think they're top 10 material, at least for qualifying. We'll see where they end up, at least with Esteban Ocon, who doesn't have a grid penalty. If he can end up in the 12th, 13th at worst, I think Ocon is a very strong contender tomorrow for points. Racing Bulls really should get both cars in the top 10. Both drivers have been great all weekend, and the Racing Bulls car really hooking up well with this racetrack. So watch out for Racing Bulls. They should be one of the strongest midfield teams for sure. Williams, suffering because of the lack of upgrades. I'd be surprised if they made the top 10. I think both cars probably should make Q2, but again, Q3 I just think is a bit too far for them. And Sauber, not as strong as they were a week ago. I think maybe, like Williams, could make Q2 with both cars, but I think Q3, they're probably about 2 to 3 tenths of a second too far away from the teams who should be in the top 10 in qualifying. But here is a reminder of my top 10 prediction. Oscar Piastri, I think, will take pole. Lando Norris, I think, will end up second, with Leclerc third, Verstappen fourth, Hamilton fifth, Russell sixth, Antonelli seventh, Alonso eighth, Hadjar ninth, and Liam Lawson in 10th. By the way, with Antonelli, remember, he has a 3-place grid penalty for tomorrow's race after the collision with Max Verstappen. So if Antonelli was to qualify 7th, he would start in P10. As we have got about 10 minutes to go until the session is underway, as a couple drops of rain falling here and there, but it should still remain just about dry. It is quite windy at Silverstone, and feels a lot colder, I bet, compared to how it felt yesterday. But it should remain dry, as we have got so 52 likes. Cheers for that. Let's try, though, and get the likes up even more. Let's try and get up to 70 plus likes if we can in the next, say, 20 minutes or so. Because given the amount we've got watching, I think that's definitely doable. So, yeah, make sure to smash the like button if you haven't already. And as well, make sure to subscribe for more content like this, as we do quali and race watch-alongs pretty much for every Grand Prix. Another thing I want to quickly say as well is I was reminded by YouTube as I logged into my account this morning that today is the 7-year birthday of the channel. The channel created on, I don't know if it was this exact day or if this day was the exact, I think this day might be I think it might be the 7-year birthday since the first video I uploaded. I don't think it was the 7-year birthday since the official creation. I think the official creation was on July the 2nd, back in 2018. But yeah, 7 years exactly today since the first video on this channel. So yeah, thank you guys so much. I know we're nearing 1,000 videos on this channel. We're going to hit it at some point, probably next year. Yeah, thank you guys so much, obviously, for the support over the years. Obviously, we've just hit 14,000 subscribers. So, yeah, thank you guys very much. And here's to, hopefully, another 7 years and more of content. And improved content as well. And yeah, thanks to all your nice messages as well in the chat. And Bravo saying the original one or this one? This one. This channel. That other channel I created in, was it 2016 or 2015? Yeah. It's the 7-year birthday of this one. And coming up in a couple weeks will be the 7-year anniversary of the first ever watch-along on this channel. Or, well, first ever race weekend where I did it, which was for the 2018 German Grand Prix. Infamous Grand Prix, as we all know why. Right. We've got saying, my God, you old bastard. Yeah, we've got, what, 6.5 minutes now until the start of qualifying. So I'm going to read out a couple final comments before we get into things. Brabham saying, I've been watching you since the old one. Yeah, and thank you for that, by the way, Brabham, for watching ever since then and still keeping up. Really appreciate it. And for anyone else who has watched me since the other channel, which again was 2016, 17, and midway through 2018, where I had that other channel, thank you as well for that, if you have stuck around even that long. And actually, Brabham has presented an interesting question earlier that I missed, unfortunately. He says, controversial opinion, is Senna the GOAT because he died and we never saw his slide down in performance? Well, personally for me, he is not the greatest of all time. It's Lewis Hamilton. But for many, yeah, they do rate Senna as, the greatest of all time. I think it absolutely does add to I think, let me try and word this carefully. I think because he died a few years, I think, before his career would have ended, and he would have won more championships, there's no doubt about that. It does add to his legacy because of the so much more potential that he had to his career in terms of wins, championships, and so on. So yeah, I see what you mean. I see what you mean, but yeah, ultimately, like you said, we never obviously got to see what Senna's decline would have looked like. I think Senna probably would have retired probably right before the new millennium. So yeah, he probably had another 4 years, maybe 5 left. But yeah, it's an interesting what if, I guess. Anyway, and make sure, by the way, to keep voting in the poll running on the chat. We've got 600 votes, and there's still quite a bit of time left if you haven't made up your mind as to who will take pole position here at Silverstone, as the intro is now playing for the F1 intro for qualifying. So that means time to get underway for us. But before we do, let's just go through a couple key stats before qualifying that you guys need to know. Firstly, the championship standings. 15 points separate the two contenders at the top. Piastri in the lead from Norris in second. Max Verstappen third. Max needs a big weekend if he wants to keep his championship somehow going. George Russell fourth, only 9 points behind Verstappen. Leclerc fifth, Hamilton sixth, Antonelli seventh, Alex Albon in eighth, Esteban Ocon in ninth, and Nico Hülkenberg now 10th in the championship in the Sauber. What a season Hülkenberg is having. On the constructors' side, McLaren over 200 points clear of the next best team, being Ferrari by 1 point ahead of Mercedes, Red Bull being cut adrift in fourth, Williams in fifth, Racing Bulls only 19 points behind in sixth. Racing Bulls, I reckon, will catch and pass Williams at some point. Haas, 7th, only 1 point clear of Aston Martin. Sauber in 9th, only 3 points off 7th. And then Alpine, 10th, and being cut adrift themselves. But let's go on to some key stats regarding the front-running teams for this Grand Prix. McLaren, their last pole position at Silverstone was in 2008 with Heikki Kovalainen. The only pole position Kovalainen had, and what a weekend it was for McLaren, where they took what was to be their last win at Silverstone with Lewis Hamilton. McLaren, they've took 3 poles at Silverstone since 2004. The other 2 poles here were with Lewis Hamilton in 2007, and Kimi Räikkönen took a blistering pole here in 2004. And last year, 3rd and 5th on the grid. It was a very disappointing session. Can they improve on that? Surely they will. Red Bull's last pole at Silverstone was a couple years ago with Max Verstappen. That is, though, their only pole at Silverstone in the last 10 years. You have to go back to 2011 for the last pole position at Silverstone before 2023. So not a great record whatsoever in qualifying here at Silverstone for Red Bull. And last year, 4th and 19th in qualifying. May end up being the same result here for them today. Ferrari's last pole at Silverstone was 3 years ago with Carlos Sainz in brutally wet conditions. That is, though, their only pole at Silverstone in the last 10 years. And you have to go back to 2012 for their last pole at Silverstone before 2022. Last year, they were absolutely terrible here, 7th and 11th in qualifying. Surely it will be a lot better today. And for Mercedes, they took pole here last year with George Russell and have taken pole 9 times at Silverstone since 2015. They're the kings of this track on a Saturday. And yeah, last year they locked out the front row. It would take a miracle, I think, for that to happen today. But yeah, Q1 will be underway very shortly. And I'll sync up the timer at the 17-minute mark as the last members of the crowd filtering in for this qualifying session. And yeah, we're seeing Lando Norris there in the McLaren garage on the TV broadcast in the mixed chrome livery. I really do like that chrome livery McLaren have got. Only problem is the sun isn't shining. It looks great when the sun is shining. Go back to the US Grand Prix of last year to see that. It's a really nice livery they do. As the session has begun, and the first two cars on track are the Saubers. Bortoleto and Hulkenberg. A year ago, Bortoleto was racing here in Formula 2. And now, obviously Formula 1 driver and now a point scorer in Formula 1. Finished 8th in Austria. Was a very good drive. Shame he couldn't finish in 7th. But Alonso did very well to hold him off. And now we're looking at Lance Stroll, who I think out-qualified and out-raced Fernando Alonso here last year. And I think that's the last time Lance Stroll out-qualified Fernando Alonso. So a full year of being absolutely slaughtered over a single lap. As there is Oscar Piastri in the McLaren garage, looking for his first pole position at Silverstone as all. That is showing the weather radar there. A lot of rain in the area, but again, that rain is to the southwest of the circuit. Doesn't look like it's going to hit the circuit. It looks like it's going to pass by. So, yeah, we should be okay. And according to race control, the risk of rain for qualifying is 30%. So, yeah, we should get away with it. As Bortoleto obviously flat through turn 1, which is basically a kink on a straight at this point. It's not a proper corner anymore. As Bortoleto through turn 3 and 4. And yeah, just getting his lap underway. What was I going to say? Yeah, lap time wise, for pole position later, as long as it's dry, I'm expecting pole position to be a late 1 minute 24. But in this session, the best lap time will probably be a late 1:25, a 1:25.7, 1:25.8 probably at best. So yeah, we'll keep our eyes on that. In terms of getting through, though, to Q2, I think as long as you do a 1 minute 26 lap time, you should be fine. So that's what we'll keep our eye on. Anyone who does a 1 minute 26, even a 26.9, I think should just about be able to get through to Q2. As Bortoleto coming through the final chicane now. And does a 1:27.4, which is a... Considering that's his first lap, that's a decent first lap. Obviously, he will improve on that quite a bit through the session. And probably, you'd hope, get into the 1:26s. Yeah, decent start for Bortoleto. That's Hulkenberg hurting his lap on the exit of the final corner to start his run. And yeah, there is some drizzle out there, but that is all I think it will be at worst, is just the occasional drizzle. Maybe a very small shower. As Lance Stroll now goes quickest for Aston Martin. And now Gasly goes quickest on a 27.1. That's a pretty good start for Gasly and Alpine. And now Colapinto goes quickest on a 27.0. So that's, yeah, very good start there for Alpine. And then Stroll 3rd, Bortoleto 4th, Hulkenberg in 5th as Alex Albon is about to complete his first lap time. And does a 26.3. That is an absolute stunner of a lap time. 1:26.3, nearly 7/10 quicker than Alpine. That is absolutely brilliant. And I think that already pretty much seals his place in Q2. As we're looking at Max Verstappen, who's had a bit of a struggle this weekend. I saw that comment, by the way, Brabham, saying, honestly, how can this be the middle of the summer? This is why we call it the Great British Summer, because you never know what's coming next. As Verstappen has done a purple first sector. Flat through cops, as they all are. Hopefully next year, Silverstone is a bit more of a challenge. And yeah, Max on a very, very good lap. And he's probably going to go into the 125s with this lap. So yeah, this is a very, very good start from Verstappen to qualifying. Just needs to make sure he doesn't mess up the final chicane. And he does not. Slight correction of oversteer. Verstappen does a 126.0. That is a very good start to qualifying. Lap time wise, Antonelli goes third behind Albon, as Lando Norris goes second to Verstappen, a 10th down. Did a purple final sector. As we're now looking at the Monegasque of Charles Leclerc, who's always been brilliant at this track, but he's somehow still doesn't have a win here as he goes third. Yeah, Leclerc. Remember 2019, he was absolutely brilliant that weekend. Somehow finished third despite having to go wheel to wheel with Verstappen in every corner. As Piastri goes quickest at 126.002. Lewis Hamilton goes fourth. As George Russell goes fifth. So yeah, Mercedes, not a great start, but again, I don't think they've really got a lot of pace. As Hamilton up to sixth. Lawson has just gone 10th for Racing Bulls. Good start for him. As Alonso goes third. Only a 10th off Piastri. What a lap that is. And what a start to the session from Fernando Alonso. As Behrman, who has a 10th-place grid drop, goes 8th. That's a good lap from Behrman, but yeah, his weekend destroyed by that penalty. As we're now looking at Yuki Tsunoda. As Carlos Sainz goes up to 11th place. Not too far behind his teammate. And actually right behind his teammate. As Hadjar has gone 7th. So a great start by the young Frenchman. So Hadjar in 8th. As Yuki Tsunoda only goes 14th with that lap. That is, and that's, what, 126. 0.6, as there's Gordon Ramsay there. As yeah, the top 10 is Piastri, Verstappen, Alonso, Norris. Russell is 5th, and then it's Hamilton 6th. Hadjar 7th, Behrman 8th, Leclerc 9th, Albon 10th, and then Sainz, Antonelli, Lawson, Tsunoda, Ocon, and then in the drop zone, Colapinto, Gasly, Stroll, Bortoletto, Hulkenberg. But the lap times seem to be a lot quicker. Or not the lap times, but the gap through the field I was expecting for Q1 is a lot closer than I expected. Because as Colapinto spins coming out the final corner. Can he please keep it up the barriers? No, he doesn't. He touches the barrier and he's probably... Can he get going again? Did he hit it that hard? Yep, he can get going again. That's good to see. and he will cross the line for that lap, but they may still red flag the session because there's part of the barrier that's, well, not part of the barrier, but the advertising hoarding that's come off. As Colapinto goes very slowly over the start-finish line, and yeah, they've green flagged it now, thankfully. As someone has improved and come out of the drop zone, I'll let you know who that is in a moment. It's Colapinto's down to 17th now. Here's a replay. Wasn't the greatest lap he was on, and then out of the final corner, he went slightly too wide over the rumble strips on the exit curb of the penultimate corner. And that unsettled the car. And yeah, he will have to tour back to the pits. And hopefully for him, that is not a broken suspension. So yeah, Colapinto lives to fight possibly another day. By the way, Rooks, good to see you. Hopefully you are doing well. As race control have now red flagged the session, and that'll be because of very slight damage to the barrier. So yeah, this will be oh no, it's Colapinto. That's why we've got a red flag, because Colapinto has stopped out on the racetrack. He stopped, by the looks of it, at the exit of the pit lane. So thankfully he's not far away from getting back to the pits, which is actually a smart thing from Colapinto. Even though he's going to get out of the car and he's out of the session, that's smart from him because it means that it won't take a long time to get that car out of the way and back underway. So good thinking there by Colapinto. But yeah, shame. He was ahead of Gasly up until that moment. But yeah, he's now out of the session. As we did have some improvements there before the red flag. Lance Stroll up to 12th. Bortoletto up to 16th. Hulkenberg up to 18th, and then the two Alpines 19th and 20th. But yeah, this red flag will probably be for about 5 minutes, I'd imagine. And as Rook's saying, 6 minutes and 49 seconds left on the clock. And yeah, probably a 5-minute delay, I'd imagine. But the lap time's a lot, or not the lap times, but the field is a lot closer than I was expecting here in Q1. I thought it'd be spread out quite a bit from first down to, the people in the drop zone. But yeah, it is a lot closer. And I think to get through now to Q2, you're probably going to have to do a mid 1 minute 26. Or maybe, at worst, a 26.6, 26.7 maybe, at the absolute worst. But yeah, you're going to have to do a pretty strong 1:26 lap time. I still think Alex Albon in 10th is probably just about okay. He did a 26.3, so I think Albon will be okay. But I think anyone probably from what? Anyone from probably Sainz or Stroll down is in trouble. And that includes, obviously, Antonelli in the Mercedes and Tsunoda in the Red Bull. As Colapinto has got out of the car. And having a decent conversation with the marshals, who do such a great job at Silverstone. Shout out to them. And yeah, they're just replaying the onboard of Colapinto, his mistake. And yeah, I'd imagine he has broken the either the suspension or the track rod of that Alpine. Yeah, that's a shame because he looked decent up until that moment. He looked like he was having a decent qualifying as Flavio puts his head in his hands. And that's not going to help your case, Franco. Not just for the rest of the season, but obviously next season. As Colapinto's car is just being put onto the back of the truck. And yeah, this car will be removed very quickly. As there is Antonelli we're seeing in the garage, and they're showing the lap time of Bortoleto in 16th, who is the highest placed driver in the drop zone. And Bortoleto has done a 126.0 0.7 So yeah, it's a lot closer the field from first down to the drop zone than I expected. And yeah, you're probably gonna have to do at worst, I'd say a 126.5 to get through. As I was just looking at some of the drivers' visor cams as they're just waiting for the red flag to finish, which it will in a moment. Todd says Pinto thought his car was AWD. Bravo Moz saying no sympathy for colour printer from my end of the world. I've never heard that as a slander name for Franco. That's a good one. Colour printer. Astro saying bring back Jack. Ramirez's colour printer caused Piastri to miss out on challenging Norris in Austria. Yeah, he did. That I still can't believe what happened there. Absolutely awful driving from Franco, and lucky that it didn't end up being a lot worse. As they've just race control just let us know the session will resume in 3 minutes time at 15:21 local time. So yeah, we'll be back underway very shortly. There's all the tents hosting all the events that will probably be going on later, after parties and whatever. Which I honestly don't understand why Silverstone do after parties. Silverstone, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone is now turning almost into a music festival. The way they hold it, which I mean, yeah, it's great for their bank balance, but I just don't get. I don't get it really. And the people they're attracting to the Grand Prix I don't think are really. There are plenty of die-hard fans there at Silverstone. I have no doubt about that, but it's also attracting plenty of people who I don't think really give a fuck about Formula One. But money, 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 money. That is all it is about, especially in this country. But yeah, another couple minutes and we'll be back underway. And yeah, we'll see who gets eliminated here. Again, I think anyone from Sainz. Yeah, probably anyone from Carlos Sainz down is at risk. Obviously, Colapinto is out of the session and he will end up 20th. Not necessarily starting last because obviously Behrman got a 10-place grid penalty, so may end up starting 19th. But yeah, Todd asking, is it cooler temps today? Yeah, a lot cooler. Probably a good thing for the fans because it was quite hot yesterday. And the temperatures are probably, I think the track temperature is about 10 degrees Celsius cooler than it was yesterday. Yesterday it was hot, sunny, and dry. Today, overcast, windy, quite windy as well, and the odd, bit of drizzle. So yeah, it's again your typical British summer. Saying that, it has been probably the best summer we've had this summer, probably for a few years. It's been very sunny compared to the last few summers we've had. Last year, summer was absolutely terrible. It was overcast almost all the time in the summer last year. But this year, it's been sunny almost all the time. So, yeah. It just happens to be that this Grand Prix has fallen on a weekend where the weather has took a slight break from its usual bashing, as some light drops of rain falling as the session back underway and some cars now onto the circuit. And Piastri saying some drops in the pit lane. And there you go, 6 minutes to go in Q1. As we are looking at, I think that was Williams there we were looking at briefly. Now we're looking at the two Ferraris very slowly leaving the pit lane. I think both Ferraris are fine, to be honest, with the lap times they've done to get through. But obviously they'll want to show a bit more pace than they have so far. I still think a late 1 minute 25 in this part of qualifying is possible. Piastri, we're on board with now on the broadcast, is quickest on a 1:26.0. As yeah, some darker clouds overhead, but I think that's just passing through. As Oscar Piastri starts what will probably be his final lap of Q1. And Piastri flies through turn 1 and 2. Now into turn 3 and 4. And these types of corners of turn 3 and 4, I think that's really where they are superior, McLaren to Ferrari, as Piastri backed off on that lap. As Lewis Hamilton saying on the radio, track is definitely not the same, more slippery. Yeah, some some drizzle falling on the track, which has made it more slippery, but it is still nowhere near dry or nowhere near wet enough to be, to consider intermediate tyres. As Charles Leclerc has just been noted for a yellow flag infringement, so we'll see what happens with that. That does not sound good. As Alex Albon is on another lap. He's had a brilliant start to qualifying. Let's see what he can do. And if as long as this lap's an improvement, I think Albon definitely will make his way through. And he's actually half a tenth up on Piastri after 2 sectors. This is a super lap from Alex Albon, who has always been very strong here. Remember, he qualified 7th here for Williams in 2023. As all bit corrections through the final corner. But he comes to the line, he goes 3rd. And that's a brilliant lap. And that definitely Albon through to Q2. We're now looking at Hulkenberg. Both Saubers, obviously, in the drop zone. As Hulkenberg to the line, goes 14th. And Bortoletto goes 11th. The Saubers are out of the drop zone for the moment. Hulkenberg, I'm not sure, will get through that lap time. As Verstappen does a 1:25.886. That's a brilliant time from Verstappen. And yeah, Max has really shown quite a bit of pace in this first part of qualifying. Obviously, I have to see if he continues that through the rest of the session, but been a very good start for Max. As Oliver Behrman's just done a purple middle sector. Tsunoda is on a lap that will see him surely get out of the drop zone. And Tsunoda out of the final corner. Goes 6th. That's definitely good enough to get into Q2. As Oliver Behrman goes 3rd. What a lap by the young Brit. Obviously his home race as well. Esteban Ocon, his teammate, goes 7th. Here is Antonelli, currently in the drop zone, goes 8th. So, in the drop zone now, Stroll, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Gasly, and Colapinto. Colapinto obviously is out of the session. As Leclerc is on a lap here. He's not improved the first sector, which is not terrible. Depends how close he was to that first sector, the personal best first sector he's done. But yeah, Leclerc earlier, I was going to say, he's had so many great races here. 2020, remember, in what was an awful Ferrari car, he ended up on the podium. And then in the other race, on a one-stop strategy, he very close to getting a podium that weekend. 2021, really should have won the race, but it was took away from him in the last few laps. 2022, he should have won, but Ferrari screwed him over. One day, Leclerc will win the British Grand Prix. He's clearly good enough to get one, but just needs the luck to be a bit better as he goes 8th on that run. Not a great lap, but good enough to get through to Q2. We've got 30 seconds left. In Q1, Isaac Hadjar goes up to 8th. Ferrari, by the way, not going to make it comfortably through, I don't think, to this second part of qualifying, as Lawson only goes 14th. As Carlos Sainz has done a purple first sector. And middle sector is just completed. He's only a 10th off Max Verstappen. This is a brilliant lap by Carlos. Just need to keep it together in the final sector, and he will surely get through. As Gasly is improving as well, as Russell finishes the session in 10th. Carlos Sainz goes 8th. That's definitely good enough. He is through. As Lewis Hamilton, by the way, is in the pits in 14th. He will get through, but probably only just. As Pierre Gasly goes up to 15th and just about gets through to Q2. What a lap by Gasly. Alpine have clearly been the slowest team this weekend, and he's still dragged that car into Q2. But that unfortunately means Liam Lawson, who I was expecting to be in the top 10, is out in Q1. A shocker from him. But there you go. Q1 over and done with. Let's go to the drivers who have made it through. Verstappen, Piastri, Behrman. What a lap from him. Albert as well. Brilliant. Alonso, Norris, Ocon, Sainz, Hadjar, Leclerc, Russell, Antonelli, Tsunoda, Hamilton, and Pierre Gasly. And knocked out in Q1, Liam Lawson, Gabriel Bortoleto, Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg, and Franco Colapinto. As that's a replay of Lawson having a slight moment through Stowe. Probably cost him maybe half a tenth or so. But yeah, Lawson just wasn't good enough there. But yeah, poor performance from Liam. Obviously, poor performance from Stroll. Yet again, what a surprise. 18th on the grid. And even though both Saubers are out, good to see Bortoleto yet again out-qualifying Hulkenberg. Remember, Bortoleto is ahead in the head-to-head in qualifying compared to Hulkenberg. So, yeah. Sauber just not quick enough in the end. As Q2 will be underway in 2 or 3 minutes, and it's obviously a 15-minute long session where we'll knock out the next 5 slowest. There you go. There's the second cut-off zone. And yeah, we await the next part of qualifying. Quickly, before we go any further, we're on 83 likes. Let's try and get up to 100 likes if we can in the next, say, 10-15 minutes. We're on 83 likes. Yeah, just another 17 likes to get to 100. Let's try and get there if we can. And make sure to, smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And as well, that poll in the chat, still running. Let me know, who do you think takes poll. That poll will keep running probably for the next 20 minutes. And then I will finish it up and we'll see who you guys have voted for as the most likely to take pole position. But yeah, Behrman, Albon, and Alonso were the 3 standouts for me in that session. Absolutely brilliant. But we'll see what they can do in what do you call it, in Q2, which a couple more minutes and we'll be underway for that. So let me just read a couple comments quick before we go any further. Super Kev saying, mates, that Stroll was, is, and will be a fraud. Absolutely. That video I made at the end of 2023, which I think is the most viewed. I think it is the most viewed video on the channel, over 100,000 views. Everything I said in that video is still true, and it's even more true now than it was when I made it. So, yeah. Lance Stroll, we all know what he is. Yanni, good to see you. Says Stroll has very loving, encouraging, and supportive parents, lol. Clearly. Because he should not be anywhere near this grid. Bradham says it's kind of unbelievable that Lance Stroll has a pole position. That's what makes it even more frustrating, especially with this last couple of years where I feel like he's going downhill, is we have seen performances from him where you're like, this guy is special, or this guy is really good. But then most of the time, this is what you get. Diabolical, diarrhea level performances. But Aston Martin will keep him as long as possible because Daddy owns the team. Simple as that. But, yeah. That's Aston Martin's problem to deal with. And again, if they ever want to win a Constructors' Championship, if they ever get a car good enough to do so, Lance will have to go. Off-Dress says, Chazzy, you think Lance's personality is awful with his driving? I mean, I've never met the guy, so I can't say what he's like as a person, but I've seen a couple instances of him lashing out towards others, which doesn't make me like him anymore. So, yeah. Again, I've made my thoughts clear on Stroll, and again, that video, hopefully it will keep getting watched over the next few years when, as Stroll continues to just do exactly what I said in that video, which is, mediocre. Let me just scroll up and see if I can find another comment quick before we move on. Super Kev says, I was shocked when I came to the UK this spring for holidays. It was sunny for once. Yeah, spring was really nice this year. Probably the best spring we've had. Probably since COVID. So yeah, it was really nice. And I was hoping that wasn't going to be it, because sometimes we do get that in the UK where spring will be really sunny and then the summer will just be, yeah, like overcast, humid, but not a lot of sun. But yeah, we've had plenty. Anyway, Q2 is underway. I'll sync up the timer in about 15 seconds as Max Verstappen, I believe that is. Yes, it is hitting the track. Good to see that Sonoda is joining us for once in the Red Bull in Q2. There you go. 14 minutes remaining Q2. For this session, the best lap time I can see is a low-ish 125, like a 125.2, 125.3. So for me, if you want to be getting through to Q3, you need, if you do a 1 minute 25, you should definitely get through. I think the worst lap time I can see making it through is a very low 126. So keep your eyes on that. Anyone who does a 125 lap time, they should make it through. As we're looking at Max Verstappen, the world champion, coming through cops on his outlap. Verstappen, of course, has won this race a couple times. Well, he's won the British Grand Prix officially once, but he has won here twice at Silverstone. Who could forget that? Amazing win he had in the 70th anniversary Grand Prix. Very hot day that was, that day. And yeah, he absolutely smashed the field that day. Absolutely one of the best drives of his career. Still, I think that drive that day, even though yeah, Mercedes to a degree was suffering, he still pulled off an amazing result and drive. And we know what he's capable of. But can he somehow drag even more pace out of this Red Bull? As he begins his lap going through turn 3 and 4, where the Red Bull still does not look great, but he's doing his best with not a lot. The Red Bull car has just only got worse in the last year or so. And when I say worse, I mean even further away from the front of the field. As Max through left field. And yeah, we'll have to wait to the end of the lap to see how great of a lap time this is. If he can immediately bang this into the 125s, that would be a very good start to Q2. Obviously did a 125.8. As a bit of a wiggle through the exit of Beckett's. So that would have cost him probably a 10th. As he comes through Stowe. Absolutely fine through there. Now into the final chicane. And Verstappen exits that chicane, comes to the line, and does a 125.3. That is an absolutely brilliant lap time. Lewis Hamilton does a 126.1, but that'll be on used tyres. Ferrari always use used tyres on first run of Q2, so don't worry about that if you are a Ferrari fan. As Leclerc goes third, nearly a second slower than Max. But that lap time from Max, that is a really, really good lap time. And he's showing that Red Bull is a lot more pace than I think we expected. As Oscar Piastri does the exact same lap time and goes second. Because, of course, if you set the exact same time second to the other driver that did it, then you place second. Alonso goes third on a 1:25.7. That's a very good lap by him. Sainz does a 1:25.8. So Alonso and Sainz, I'd say, are pretty much through with those lap times. And same for Albon, who goes fifth. Williams have really turned it up, as Hadjar goes sixth, as Tsunoda only ninth for him. As we just seen Keanu Reeves walking into the paddock. Great guy. And by the way, he's going to be voicing over, it's been announced by Cadillac F1, who of course are the new team on the grid next year. He's going to be voicing over a new documentary, which is going to be about, I think, Cadillac's process of, obviously getting to the grid for next year. Lando Norris goes quickest, a 1:25.2. That's a lot more like it from McLaren. As Behrman has gone 8th and Ocon 9th. So Haas looking decent. Obviously, they'll drop down a slight bit after these two Mercedes laps. No, they won't. Antonelli only goes 11th. George Russell 4th, but 0.4 of a second away from Norris. And yeah, that's about right for how their car's been. So there you go. George Russell just about getting ahead of Alonso there. What a lap from Alonso, who we're just seeing here. I think he's going to be complaining about being held up. Yeah, he says, what's Antonelli doing? And then Alonso says, it's good he's going to get a penalty. Good positions for us. I think he's talking about Antonelli getting the grid penalty, which he will get from last Grand Prix out in Austria. So, with 7.5 minutes almost to go, in the drop zone, Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Antonelli, Charles Leclerc, Pierre Gasly, and Yuki Tsunoda. Hamilton and Leclerc, though, definitely were on used tyres for their run there. So, we need to still see what Ferrari are going to do. But Max Verstappen really has impressed me so far. He is showing pole position level pace through this session so far. Not saying he'll get pole, but the pace he has shown so far, he's absolutely looking like a contender for pole position. So watch out for Max Verstappen. He is absolutely on it today. By the way, cheers for 100 likes. Absolutely brilliant to see that. And yeah, keep you haven't hit the like button yet, obviously keep making sure to do so. But yeah, cheers for that. Really appreciated. So yeah, in the top 10, you got Norris, Verstappen, Piastri, Russell, Alonso, Sainz, Albon, Hadjar, Behrman, and Ocon. Behrman and Ocon, the two slowest cars in the top 10, the two Haases, they've done a 1:25.9. So, yeah, very good pace, I have to say, but they still will probably get knocked out in this session, you'd imagine, because the two Ferraris and Antonelli should make it through to Q3. So Hadjar, Behrman, and Ocon are really, I think, at risk here of elimination. The two Williamses, though, have done a great job so far. Alonso, absolutely brilliant. I told you guys Alonso would be on fire today, and he is. I think Alonso's already done a good enough time to get through to Q3. So Alonso should be all good for that. And Williams, I think, probably will get at least one car in to Q3. But of course, both Ferraris and Antonelli, once they improve their lap times properly, they should be in the top 10. So the top 10 is going to the lap times and the positions are going to change around quite a bit. Now the sunshine comes out at Silverstone briefly. And yes, some blue in the sky. See, the great British summer. You just never know what comes next. As all the cars coming out of the garages for the final run of Q2. Sorry. The top 5 should be all good to make Q3, which is Norris, Verstappen, Piastri, Russell, and Alonso. But from Sainz down, Sainz obviously in 6th, from him down all the way to Tsunoda, those are the drivers that could get eliminated in this session. So watch out. This is going to be a very exciting end to Q2. And we could get a surprise. And I have to say, with Ferrari, even though the lap times they did were on used tyres, those lap times were not very impressive. They still should have been in the top 10, despite being on used tyres, if they were on the pace of McLaren, like some people have thought this weekend. But they're 11th and 13th. So, both Ferraris will make it through, but their pace is nowhere near as good as I think a lot of us were expecting, at least so far. Again, in Q3, maybe they'll show their absolute true pace and wipe everyone away. But yeah, Ferrari so far in this session have not looked that good. But yeah, they should still make it through to Q3 with both cars, no doubt. And in this Q2, they'll probably end up around 4th, 5th, I'd imagine. I'd be surprised if they went quickest, especially with McLaren and Red Bull, with Verstappen being out there, who will probably improve further. As we're looking at Charles Leclerc, who last year at the British Grand Prix had his worst qualifying result, I think, ever. Yeah, worst qualifying result ever here at Silverstone in Formula 1, which was 11th. Every other time Leclerc has made the top 10. Lewis Hamilton, of course, always makes the top 10. Surely he will again as he starts his final run of Q2. And he dances the car through turn 3 and 4. As Leclerc just ahead of him completes the first sector, which is a good start. Again, as long as the Ferraris get through, that's fine. As Hamilton does a purple first sector. As Leclerc now flies through Copse Corner, where he brilliantly overtook his teammate 3 years ago, who back then, obviously, Hamilton was a Mercedes driver. Leclerc still... what is amazing about that overtake is that Leclerc was on old, hard tyres and Hamilton was on fresh, soft tyres, and he still did it. As Hamilton, half a second up on Ocon. As Oliver Bearman improves up to 4th. What a lap by Bearman, and I think that might get him through to Q3 despite his grid drop. As Leclerc goes quickest. Lewis Hamilton now goes quickest. What an improvement. So Ferrari now 1st and 2nd as Alonso goes ahead of Russell into 7th place. As we're looking at Antonelli, who's just started his final lap. Still another 20 seconds to go until the checkered flag falls. But yeah, Oliver Bearman, what a lap. 1:25.5 for Bearman. He'll be unlucky to get eliminated in this session. He's been absolutely brilliant. What a shame he's got that penalty. As Tsunoda goes up to 10th, but I'd be very surprised if that gets him through. He's only barely into the top 10 as Albon now pushed down. As the checkered flag is now fallen. These are your final laps as Max Verstappen enters the pits. He should be fine. Isaac Hadjar ends up only 11th. Ocon ends up only 13th. As Antonelli through Stowe. As Gasly goes up to 9th. What a lap by Gasly. As Antonelli through the final corner and goes 8th. That should be enough for Antonelli. As Russell has backed off because he doesn't need to go any quicker because he is safe. But what a lap by Pierre Gasly in what has looked to be the slowest car this weekend. He has somehow dragged that car into the top 10. What a lap by Gasly. Continuing to show why he is one of the best drivers in that midfield pack. That is a super lap. Also, Oliver Behrman, 6th. What a lap by the young Brit. But let's go through. Now Q2's done with. Let's go through your drivers that have made it through to the top 10 shootout. Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, Oliver Behrman, Fernando Alonso, Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, Pierre Gasly, and knocked out in Q2, Carlos Sainz, Yuki Tsunoda, Isaac Hadjar, Alex Albon, and Esteban Ocon. And Q3 will be underway in about 4 to 5 minutes from now. Cannot wait for it. Especially after Ferrari showed a lot of pace there at the end. And it looks like we've got a 3-team fight for pole position. McLaren versus Ferrari versus Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. Mercedes do not look like they've got the pace. So they're clearly going to be 4th, as I think we've all expected. One good thing, though, for Alonso and Gasly getting through is that obviously Behrman's got a 10-place grid penalty and Antonelli's got a 3-place penalty. So if Antonelli ends up 7th at best, then Alonso and Gasly will start, higher on the grid because of that. And obviously, for Gasly, for example, if Behrman out-qualifies him but ends up only, say, obviously a position or 2 ahead of him and Antonelli ends up in 7th, Gasly will end up on the 4th row of the grid. So, yeah, Pierre Gasly has put himself in a really good position, and so has Alonso as well. In terms of the Q2 eliminations, that was probably the first good qualifying Carlos Sainz has had in a while, out-qualifying his teammate. And even though he was eliminated, he will very likely start in 10th because of Behrman's penalty. So that's a good qualifying, I think, given the pace of the car. Tsunoda 12th, as expected. Probably the best he could have done, to be honest. Hadjar 13th, that is very disappointing. Albon 14th, he'll be disappointed with that. Ocon 15th, he will be very disappointed to be 15th with Behrman, his teammate, in 6th. Ocon really should be making the top 10 if Behrman's up there in 6th. So Ocon can definitely score points tomorrow. The Haas, we know, is very quick over a race distance. But if Behrman ends up 17th, 18th on the grid because of this 10-place drop, Haas are going to end up starting, 14th and 17th? Or even 14th and 18th, something like that. As looks like we're just seeing a replay of Max Verstappen, why he had to back off on that lap. And it's for Esteban Ocon, who broke very late on the entry to turn 3 to try and get out of the way, and barely did. So, yeah, Ocon destroying his qualifying there. Anyway, Q3 will be underway in a couple minutes' time. Lico means lift and coast. That's the code name that Ferrari use for that. But I am just going to wait just another few seconds because we're almost on 1,500 votes for this poll in the chat. And I'm going to finish it up once we get over to 1,500. And there you go. 1,500 votes. Very much thanks for voting, guys. Much appreciate it. And I asked you guys, who will take pole position for the British Grand Prix? 37% of the vote to Lewis Hamilton. It would be fantastic if he got pole. It really would. But has that Ferrari got enough pace to get pole? We will have to see. Lando Norris on 30%, and then Leclerc and Piastri locked on 16%. From what I've seen so far, McLaren and Max and the Red Bull look very, very strong. And Ferrari, I still think, might be just a slight bit too far away. But we'll see. Again, looks to me like we've got a 3-team fight here for pole. And 5 drivers who could end up on pole position. As it's now the calm before the storm. And this is where, no doubt, the absolute elite drivers in Formula 1 show why they're the absolute best. Silverstone is a driver's circuit, like, you know, your Suzuka's, Monaco's, drivers, circuits like that. It's a circuit where you can really show just how elite or great or even good you are. Which is why Lewis Hamilton, the greatest of all time, has won here and took pole so many times. Yes, he's had strong cars, but he's always had strong competition for almost all of those pole positions that he's taken. Whether it be from, you know, Rosberg, Alonso, Raikkonen, Vettel, Verstappen. So yeah, this is a real good showcase of the absolute elite in our sport. As Q3 has begun, as all the drivers come out now. Again, shout out to Behrman, Alonso and Gasly making it through. And yeah, Fernando, I think, will be very pleased that Behrman and Antonelli obviously have made it through because Alonso, because of their grid penalties for Behrman and Antonelli, Alonso has a pretty good chance of being 7th on the grid, which would be a really good starting position for Alonso. As he's making his comeback in the championship, Alonso, after the last Grand Prix, is now level on points with his teammate Stroll in the championship. Alonso now 12th in the championship. Alonso, I think, will eventually finish in the top 10 of the championship. And there you go, 11 minutes remaining in qualifying. As they're just saying there on the broadcast that on this day in 2020, Lando Norris got his first podium in Formula 1. Yes, today, 5 years ago, that was the first race of that incredible and wacky 2020 season. Thankfully, we are far removed from those times. As we are looking at the only Red Bull in Q3, Max Verstappen. Just behind him, further down the track, is Antonelli, who has a 3-place grid penalty. And yeah, would be amazed if he doesn't start at the very back of the top 10 tomorrow with that penalty. As there is Keanu Reeves on the pit wall somewhere. Here is Max Verstappen. Can he somehow drag this car onto pole position? He's been absolutely brilliant so far in qualifying. Let's see what he has. Turn 3 and 4. Oh, he understeers at turn 4. He tried to turn in, but the car said no. That is costly. That would have cost him a couple tenths. But he completes the first sector at 27.7. We'll see how that compares with the others in the first sector in a moment. As Verstappen through Luffield. As Piastri is coming to the first sector and does a 27.6, so just over a tenth quicker. So, such a shame he had that moment, Max, at that corner, because that first sector, other than that, was really good. As through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, Verstappen comes, and this lap is, it's not bad, but it's not pole position level at all. As Oliver Behrman sets the first lap time. Don't know what it is. As Piastri, couple tenths up on what Max is doing. Verstappen, not the greatest X out the final corner, does a 25.2. That is, yeah, going to be a few tenths away, I think, probably from the ultimate pole position time. Antonelli does a 26.2. Horrible lap. Goes third behind Behrman. Oscar Piastri, a 24.9. That is a brilliant lap by the Australian. And so far has been quicker on this lap compared to teammate Norris, who comes to the line and goes second, nearly 2 tenths down on his teammate. So advantage to Piastri. Here comes Mr. Saturday, George Russell. Took pole here a year ago. Only 4th for the moment. Nearly, or 6.5 tenths off pole at the minute. That is quite a lot. Leclerc goes 4th. Lewis Hamilton goes 2nd. What a lap by Hamilton for now. He's on the front row of the grid. Here comes Alonso. He goes 7th, which is, again, where he is aiming to start the race. As Piastri says, check the floor. So clearly he's had a rumble over some rumble strip or some gravel or something. But Oscar Piastri, as it stands, is on provisional pole, a 124.995. I said that a late 124 lap time is what pole position will be. And at the moment, it is. But can anyone beat it? We'll have to see. Max Verstappen can definitely go quicker. So watch out for Verstappen. I still think Max could. I'm just going to mute my mic a sec. I think Max could end up on the front row if he hadn't have made that mistake at turn 4. I think Max would be probably 2nd. So Verstappen definitely got more pace. Lando Norris surely has more pace. Leclerc, I think, has got more pace. So yeah, we have got a legit 3-team fight here for pole position. And any one of the top 5, still with 1 run, remember, to go in qualifying, any one of the top 5 could end up on pole position with just over 5.5 minutes of qualifying remaining. As we've seen a replay there, Piastri going over the exit curve of Stowe. That's probably where he runs slightly wide. Yeah, he did. So probably cost himself half a tenth at most there. But at the minute, it's still good enough for provisional pole. Very, very good first run from Piastri. But I still think there's another 10th or two out there on the track that he could find. So, yeah. We'll see whether he can find it or whether Ferrari or even Max will find it. Or even Lando Norris, of course. 2 home drivers in the top 5 and currently 2nd and 3rd. As we're looking at Lewis Hamilton. What a lap that was from Hamilton. But does he feel as though he could do even better and take pole position? Very tense moments as we await the beginning of the final qualifying run. Mercedes, by the way, absolutely miles away from this fight. Russell 6th. 6.5 tenths off provisional pole. And yeah, Mercedes, I think 6th and 7th in this session is the best they can do. And yeah, Mercedes, like they were in Austria, miles off the pace and the slowest of the front 4 teams. As all the cars come out of their garages with 3.5 minutes to go to begin that final attempt at pole at Silverstone. Pole position at Silverstone, by the way, is not the most successful. In the last few years, not a lot of the pole sitters have gone on to win. Last year, of course, Hamilton won from 2nd. In 2022 and 2023, the pole sitter won. But 2021, obviously Hamilton won from 2nd. 2019, Hamilton won from 2nd. Vettel won from 2nd in 2018. So 2nd on the grid. Been pretty lucky here. So yeah, if pole is not taken by Hamilton or Verstappen or whoever, but they end up 2nd, it's not necessarily the end of the world. As we're looking at Lewis Hamilton in the bright red Ferrari. Well, not bright red, but very bright car with especially his helmet and gloves. As we're now looking through the visor cam of Lando Norris. A year ago, he had the pace for pole and he failed to deliver it, and he said that he messed up. Can he improve on that today? He has to, as far as I'm concerned. If McLaren, with Piastri up there, Lando has got to deliver on this lap. The championship depends on it. As Lando Norris, through the final chicane, starts his final attempt at his first pole position at Silverstone. Flies through turn 1 and 2. But here's where it really starts at turn 3. And Norris, slightly wide on the exit of 3, but it's okay. We'll see what the first sector is looking like when he gets to it in about 4 seconds from now. Piastri has started his final run. Norris, 0.5 tenth down on Oscar after the first sector, so a decent start. But what is Oscar doing for the first sector? It's a slight bit quicker than when he went what he did before. 5 thousandths of a second quicker. So a good start for your championship leader. Lando Norris. Through Maggots. Beckett. And into Chapel. As Antonelli now goes up to 6th. And Norris 0.5 tenth up on Piastri. After the first 2 sectors, as Lewis Hamilton does a purple first sector, and George Russell has just gone up to 2nd place. What a lap out of nowhere, but he still may drop down the order quite a bit. But what a lap that is. Lando Norris to the line. Is it pole? No, it isn't. He only goes 2nd. misses out only just by 0.015 of a second as Piastri slightly loses out of the final corner. And he doesn't improve, and that opens the door for Lewis Hamilton, who currently is up on Oscar Piastri after the first two sectors. Can Hamilton take another pole at Silverstone? Through the final couple corners, Leclerc goes fourth. What is it for Hamilton? Oh, it's only fourth. He messed up the final sector and ended up a full 10th off of pole. Max, though, is out there. He's done a purple first sector and a purple middle sector. What a middle sector. He's a quarter of a second up on Piastri. This is special. From Verstappen into the final chicane. Can he keep it together to take an amazing pole position to the line? Yes, he does. By a 10th of a second, Max Verstappen takes pole at Silverstone. What a lap. A 1:24.8. That is why Max is the best of the best. The whole session was elite from him, and that lap was special. And no, the World Championship is not over for Max Verstappen when he's at this level. What a drive from Max Verstappen. Another pole position that will go right up there as one of the best he's ever had. That is a special lap. Sorry about, by the way, about the noise I made after he completed that middle sector. I could not believe what I was seeing, that he was nearly, he was a quarter of a second up on Piastri. That was just out of this world, that sector time. But Oscar Piastri second. He will be a tad disappointed. He did have a moment out of the final corner that probably cost him a few hundredths, but whether it cost him pole or not, that can be argued till the cows come home. But Oscar Piastri still second, and that is not a bad place to be at all. As I said, second has won this race many times in the last 10 years. Here's a replay of Lewis Hamilton through the final chicane. He was so quick in the first two sectors, and he just messed up that final corner. And yeah, he's ended up, 2/10 away from pole. Ferrari, 5th and 6th. They will be so disappointed with that. By the way, shout out to George Russell. I don't know how he's ended up 4th on the grid. That is mental. But yeah, all credit must go to Verstappen. That was a special lap. As I'm just trying to, what do you call it? Trying to find the live timing because I'm trying to make sure that I've got the rest of the field correct. And so the top 10: Verstappen, Piastri, Norris, Russell, Hamilton, Leclerc, Antonelli 7th. 8th, Oliver Behrman ended up in 8th, even though he will now start 18th. What a job from Behrman. Absolutely one of the drivers of the day. Alonso 9th, and then Gasly in 10th. And the rest of the field: Sainz, Tsunoda, Hadjar, Albon, Ocon, Lawson, Bortoletto, Stroll, Hulkenberg, and Colapinto. Make sure, guys, to join us for tomorrow's race. It's going to be a classic. Verstappen on pole versus the McLarens. And then you got Russell in there and the Ferraris as well. It is going to be such a good race tomorrow. So do not miss the British Grand Prix of 2025. I will be live tomorrow, 2 hours before lights out at 1 p.m. UK time for the build-up. And then we'll be watching along the British Grand Prix. And my co-commentator, as usual, Nibbler, who's in the chat, he will be joining me for, what should be a really great race. Wow. What a session that was. And let me just get this poll going for driver of the day. So who is your driver of the day for qualifying at Silverstone? And the options for driver of the day are Max Verstappen. I'm going to put George Russell in there because that lap's put fourth on the grid I thought was absolutely amazing because Mercedes have not been anywhere near this weekend. Oliver Behrman. And then Pierre Gasly. So there you go. For me, driver of the day has to be Max Verstappen. That was a special lap. Maybe not quite as good as his lap at Suzuka, but still very, very special. And like I said, that whole session from him was elite. He was on the pace all session and then just delivered an absolute cracker of a lap right when it mattered. And if he can win tomorrow's race, it is absolutely back on for him in the championship. Even though, yes, if Piastri finishes second, the gap will only go down by a few points. Max will get the win that really he has needed for these last couple races or so. But again, tomorrow is going to be a very long race. Max will have to do an absolutely top job tomorrow to be able to win because the McLarens are going to be very quick. Ferrari, I think, will be decently quick in the race as well. Russell, you would imagine, will fall off in the race. I don't think he can quite maintain fourth there. But yeah, Max is going to have to do a great job to win tomorrow's race. Todd says turn one tomorrow. Oh my god, lol. Suck on it, Sky commentators. I'm sure they were absolutely gutted when Max did what he did, but you've got to give credit where credit is due. That was just incredible. Crystal Racing says, wow, Max. Vince says, one Max to class coming up. Yeah. Just, that's why, again, he keeps reminding us why he is the best. Maybe he won't win the championship this year, but we all know who the real best is. And that's the thing. That this is what you can do in a car that's on, I won't say of the same pace, but within so many tenths of a second of the best car. Imagine what he could do if the car was, another half a second a lap quicker. It'd be winning pretty much every Grand Prix. So that's why I say if Red Bull can find an extra few tenths, then I still think Max has got a chance because this is what he can do when he's in a slower car, then imagine what he can do when he's in a car of equal performance or slightly quicker. Crystal Racing says, those British fans went quiet as mice. Yeah, that would have shut up quite a few. Vince says, I'm looking forward for Lewis to have a great race. I think Hamilton's definitely got a chance of a podium tomorrow. Leclerc, I'm a bit surprised, has not been, that great this weekend. But yeah, Ferrari can finish on the podium tomorrow, but I think they're really going to need a proper, good, strong start to the race. for that to happen, because if they get away 5th and 6th and they're behind Russell, I think Russell is really going to hold them up and hamper them, because they need to be right there. Especially, if Max and the McLarens are battling, Ferrari have got to be right in there as well. Brevamore says it's the British worst nightmare, Max and an Aussie on the front row. Absolutely. And an Aussie or Max could win absolutely tomorrow. If I was to say right now who I think the favourite to win tomorrow is, I would still say Oscar Piastri, purely because the McLaren car, I still think, is the quicker car, and in race conditions, McLaren are still really good. But, yeah. Max absolutely can win the race tomorrow, but he is going to need to perform at an incredibly high level to do it, as he's being presented the pole position award by Jose Mourinho. Great to see him at this Grand Prix. Two special ones right there. As, yeah, like I said, I still think Piastri is the favourite to win tomorrow, but whether he will or not is a different question. Max can absolutely win. Lando, even in third, can still win. Lando definitely has more pace in the bag than what he showed there. And Lando ultimately has got to be disappointed with what happened there. Again, though, Lando can still win, but he's definitely not the favourite to win. If I was to bet on the two most likely drivers to win tomorrow, I'd have to say Piastri number 1, Verstappen number 2. And then after that, I'd probably say, Norris. And then probably after that, one of the Ferrari drivers. So, yeah. But 110 votes. We've had a clear winner for driver of the day, so I may as well just finish up the poll. 112 votes. Who is your driver of the day? I asked for qualifying at Silverstone, and 86% of the vote has gone to Max Verstappen. And yeah, what a drive from him. Behrman, 6% of the vote. Shout out to him. 8th he was there. He will start 18th, but let's see what he does tomorrow. Remember, Haas have scored points from low down grid positions, so it's not impossible that Behrman will be in the top 10 at some point tomorrow. Russell, 5% of the vote. Again, great job to get on the second row somehow. Don't know how he did that. And then Gasly, who will start, I'm pretty sure Gasly tomorrow will start 8th and Alonso will start in 7th. So, yeah, that is great for those two drivers, respectively. Anyway, that's it for this stream, guys. Thank you so much for coming on to what's been a brilliant stream and a brilliant session. Great to see so many of you here, as well as so many of the regulars. And make sure to join me tomorrow for the race watch-along. Again, I'll be live 2 hours before lights out at 1 p.m. UK time. Race starts at 3 p.m. UK time. So yeah, I'll be live at 1 p.m. for the usual build-up. And then, obviously, we'll do the watch-along itself. I'll be bringing Nib on, obviously, tomorrow. He'll be joining me for the race. And yeah, make sure to join us for what is sure to be a brilliant British Grand Prix, as it usually is. Yeah, thanks for subbing, smashing the like button if you have. Make sure to smash the like button and sub if you haven't before I go. And yeah, cheers for coming along for this qualifying watch along. But until 1 p.m. UK time tomorrow, guys, for the British Grand Prix race watch along, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.